Hello. It's probably just Hedgeberg right now, but can you hear me? Question mark. Okay, I think Hedgeberg's making coffee, but she should be here, so things should be good, I think. Cool. I'll link this in reswitched, then I'll give it a minute, and then I'll get started. Okay, cool. So, we're going to be quote-unquote diffing crash report. I say quote-unquote because I checked manually, and there is only one instruction that is different from 9.0.0 versus 9.0.1. So there's actually not really anything to diff, but I figure I will just label 9.0.1 crash report on stream, and maybe that's valuable to people who are interested in how crash report works. Oh, hey, Hedgeberg said something in stream chat, so I'm going to assume we're good. Yeah, I'll probably give it like another 30 seconds or so and then get started. I don't expect us to have a huge amount of people tonight because I don't think what changed in Crash Report is a super exciting topic, especially because it is, again, only one instruction that's different. Hello. I am assuming the second part of that name is Japanese, and I don't want to try to butcher it, but hello. I am super happy with this being a smaller stream, especially because this is easy content to do. It's probably not going to last 4 hours like my other streams have, and it'll be on YouTube later anyway. But I love the Crash Report system module. I'm thinking that I might go along with what's going on in Crash Report with the atmosphere source code that corresponds to it. That would be pretty good. It's actually very close. And I might talk about some about what changed in 9.0 versus 8.0, although I don't actually have an 8.0 IDA database. The last version before 9.0 that I diffed was like 6.0 maybe, whenever they added 0x60 modules instead of like 6. Hello, the people who just joined. Okay, so let's get started. I already have the system update for 9.0.1 downloaded to this virtual machine. And today we're going to be just looking at what's changed in the Crash Report module, because only a couple of modules actually changed in 9.0.1. And Crash Report it's Crash Report HID and NS, I think. And I only really care about Crash Report of those. So, got the executable. As we did for Log Manager, the first thing that I always do when I am diffing stuff is I generate a pattern file to apply to it. So let's start by loading this into IDA. New. Load it in. Okay, cool. And then this is just a script that HTTH wrote. I think these scripts are public. You can use them to create the patterns yourselves for various SDK binaries. But Python apply pattern 900. Want to apply that to this crash report file. I will gist this output after the stream so that if people are trying to recreate this in their homes, they can just use this instead of having to get this pattern file themselves. Yeah, while this runs, I said this earlier, but new people have joined. We're different Crash Report. I checked in a hex editor, and there's only one different instruction. And so I figured this will be more me talking about how Crash Report works and comparing it to Atmosphere's Crash Report than it will be actual diffing because, again, like nothing changed. Cool. So script command, you can probably do it as a file, but I've never done it that way. I just copy all of this, paste it in. It's Python, and then we run it. And now a whole bunch of stuff will be labeled. Okay. So the first thing to do is to find where main is, which I just do by following all of these. It starts, and it's usually this one. Yes, it is. Okay, cool. So this is the main function. And the first thing that Crash Report does, and I'll actually pull up Atmosphere's Crash Report source code for comparison, is it gets the argc and argv. This is get argc, and this is get argv. And I'm not going to rename this because I know from experience the Crash Report reuses this variable later to do other things. And it parses the first argument as a string. The version of Crash Report that I implemented against only took in 2 arguments, the first of which is a process ID in argv0, and the second of which is it detailed. And they added a new argument in a later version, but it's basically just is it detailed except in a different way, and so I have never bothered to actually update this. But yeah, so it has this custom parsing routine where it will go up until 20 digits and parse in a number. And this is a decimal process ID. And the equivalent here is Stratosphere Crash Report parse process ID argument. And it's in utils, I think. If I actually go here, this is this routine for I0, I is less than 20, and the current value is not 0. It basically multiplies the current value by 10 and then adds the current digit minus the 0 literal. So this is just this custom parsing logic for what is the process ID. And then I just have this one build report guideline, but Nintendo does it a little bit differently. We call this process ID, and this is going to be is detailed 0, and this is detailed 1. And I don't have this is detailed 1, but I could add it. It's just pointless because it means the same thing as this argument, so far as I can tell. And second, let me actually export the types from my older database, which is here and has a bunch of stuff in it. I'm trying to do this properly. Actually, produce file, create C header file, export it. Okay. I will go through the types after I import them, but I'm trying to do this instead of copying it manually since I've been told this is better. Download file, parse C header file, document C report 900. Cool. So I go to the local types menu. There are a bunch of types. These are all for like what are the debug exception informations for SVC get debug event. This is all implemented in Stratosphere, and I basically just copy these directly from Stratosphere. There's this module manager, which keeps track of what modules are in the crashed process. There's this thread manager, which keeps track of what threads are in the crashed process. And a thread is basically just a thread context, the stack trace, and a hash identifying it. And it always stores the title ID for almost no reason. And module info is the module's name, module's build ID, where it starts and where it ends. And hello, Runtanal, maybe that's how you pronounce that? Probably. The Crash Report has this embedded buffer object that is just a 0x18,000 buffer and a size. This is not very interesting. And then there's the actual Crash Report struct, which is huge. It has a debug handle, it has a title ID, it has some booleans to keep track of whether or not it's 64-bit, whether it's an application, whether or not it's detailed. This is the result that caused the crash. This is information about the exception, if one occurs, that caused the crash. Where did it happen? This is a variant, depending on what kind of exception it was, what thread crashed. They have a separate thread information for the thread that crashed. They have a pointer to... So these didn't used to be pointers. If I go to my implementation, actually... Yeah, I implemented this pretty directly. So these used to just be embedded in the object. But they added this screenshot stuff in 9.0.0 that requires 0x80,000 of buffer. And in order to avoid having to store the space for both this stuff and the screenshot buffer, they added this linear heap storage of size, I think it's 0x80,000 exactly, that is used for an NN LMX heap, which is just some custom heap format that Nintendo implemented. And they allocate these objects inside of that heap ahead of time. And then before doing the screenshot stuff, they free them and reuse the heap memory. But yeah, so it has this manager for the modules. It has these threads. It has all this information about the user dying message, which is this concept that was added in 5.0.0, where when an application crashes, it can have like a custom readable message of up to a page that will show up in the crash report. And it also has an AES key and an AES IV because Nintendo encrypts their crash reports using an RSA private key to protect an AES key. But I don't bother with that because Atmosphere writes its stuff to the SD card, and we don't care about encrypting because that's not in our threat model. Yeah, so that's the crash report object. And so it's actually just this global here. I probably have to undefine this. This is the initial reports, which is like C reports undefined or internal error. And it starts out as this state because I think the constructor is like const expert or something. But hopefully that should work. Crash reports. Crash report. Yeah, way back when we used to man in the middle crash reports. We used to man in the middle the connection between the crash report system module and Secure Platform's CSRNG, which stands for Cryptographically Secure Random Number Generator service. And the idea was that crash report would reach out to get a key to use for its encryption, and we would man in the middle and return zeros, and then it would encrypt its data with zeros, and then we could decrypt them later in order to recover the actual crash reports. And this was before we had compromised the system very much at all. All we really had was SM hacks, and we used this in order to get crash reports for when we were exploiting NV services. Because we didn't have very much debug information. I don't even think we had NV services code at that point. But that let us get stack traces, which was really useful. Yeah, this is crash reports. And yeah, this is the result, is initially this 0xC6A8. And it says, yeah, it's not a very effective protection model. I mean, yeah, I have no idea what threat model it defends against. I mean, if you're at... I guess it defends against the threat model where you somehow have the ability to read NAND, but you don't have the ability to, compromise arbitrary system modules at runtime. Like, maybe if you compromise the system on a lower firmware version, and then you dump your BIS keys so you could decrypt NAND, and then you update it, and you haven't compromised a newer version... then you could dump NAND manually with a hardware mod and then get into crash reports and use that to leverage attacks against newer system versions. That's kind of my idea of the threat model that Nintendo must have, but I actually agree that it doesn't make very much sense at all to me. But why not store it as a save? Saves aren't encrypted in NAND, Hedgebird. There's no additional cryptography layer over saves. They're just stored in NAND. And this data actually does end up in a save file. It actually ends up in error reports save file. Yeah, they only have the NAND crypto layer. I know on 3DS, saves were encrypted in NAND, and that's how you think about it. But in Switch, there's just the NAND crypto. Also, if you're doing a downgrade upgrade attack where you dump your keys, the system save encryption key doesn't change on a per firmware basis. So that's still an issue for the threat model that I described, I think. Yeah. Yeah, you can see that this is basically exactly the same object. I have result is incomplete report. Yeah. Hedgewick says, they thought they needed to encrypt the NAND and the C reports, but not saves. So saves are stored in NAND. They're not stored separately. There's one system save on the SD card, and it is stored using the AES XTS file system object NAX0 that does like this bizarre key generation on like a per file path basis. So saves on the SD card are encrypted, but in NAND they just use NAND crypto because if you can compromise NAND's encryption, the privileges required to compromise NAND encryption are the same as the privileges to compromise save file encryption, and so they don't bother encrypting the stuff in NAND. But yeah, okay. So this is like crash report initialize, I think. Crash reports initialize. Yeah, and then it's going to be writing stuff into memory. Why is that happening? Crash report is detailed. Ugh, that's super annoying output. There we go. That's much better. I agree it's a super odd threat model, but, you know, what can you do? Yeah. Okay, so this is a crash report object. Crash report. Does this return anything? I could just look at the old version, but it's kind of more fun to go along. Yeah, okay, so this returns a bool. I think it's probably more fun to just do this by hand so that you can see me doing stuff from memory. Right, so this initializes the xpeep storage variable, which is a byte buffer of size 80,000 as an xpeep. So this is like nn lmm initialize xpeep, probably. Yeah, and an lm detail create xpeep, and it also creates a mutex. So that's right. Cool. It has this weird object, but that also doesn't really matter. Awesome. So, and it saves the XP pointer into the crash report object, and then this is like all allocation stuff. And allocate from XP. Yeah, so it allocates the module manager, which is size 1E08. It allocates the thread manager, which is size 1AA10. It allocates the dying message buffer, which is a page. And then it does this weird thing where it reuses this variable. I'm sure it doesn't reuse this in source. This is just a compiler optimization. It allocates the crash report buffer object, which is 0x18,000 of data, which gets encrypted, and 8 bytes for the size. Cool. And then if there's a thread manager, if there's this, this just clears the AES key and sets the dying message to 0, so that stuff is all initialized. And then the compiler reuses this for the result. But yeah, it's simple. Just allocate all these objects so that it can free them later, and then clear the AES key and clear the dying message buffer. And I will observe that there's also an AES IV variable that they don't clear here. They don't need to clear this because they will end up calling CSRNG generate cryptographically random bytes on it later. But it's kind of odd to me that they clear this key and not the corresponding initialization vector. Who knows? Maybe I'll say this on this stream and it'll get cleared in a future revision of Crash Report. I mean, it doesn't matter, so it probably won't, but that's the benefit of streaming things, is that they're on the public record. But yeah. So I call build reports with crash process ID and is this equal to 1, and they save is detailed to is this equal to 1. So what does my build report do? Build report. Has extra info, is detailed, same thing. Yeah, so this is me implementing that because I figure this whole thing is inlined. And then I call open process, crash reports attached to process, which I'm pretty sure just calls svc debug active process. Yeah. Let me look up, I'm just going to pull up the SVC page because I'm not so good at remembering what the arguments are to all of the service calls. And it's probably for the best that I just have it up so that I can reference it in case I need to define prototypes. I mean, what I should really do is I should define an IDA script that just automatically finds all of these system calls and then attaches them. And I think I have one of those somewhere, but I don't remember where that is. So I can't use it at the moment. I definitely had that at one point, but I just don't remember where it is. 0x60 is debug active process. Yeah, input is process ID, and it outputs to a debug handle. Okay. Edit other force. Decompiles call dword svc active debug active process keyword output and keyword process ID. Cool, that should be right. Yeah. Okay. This is just debug active process on the input process ID, which is what I remembered it being. Cool. And then if opening the process succeeded, I convert it to a Boolean, but I'm pretty sure this is exactly the same thing. Open process if R succeeded, debug active process. Yeah. This result is actually a debug handle. I can't say that it's the struct member, but the debug handle is the first member of the crash report. So this will have opened the debug handle inside of the crash report object. This should really be @gcrashreport.debug handle. Cool. And then I have like an onscope.exit this close, but I don't know that they do. I think they will manually like call close over here, and there's no way to break out, so it's probably the same thing. Okay. So the next thing that I do is process exceptions, so I'm going to assume that this is process exceptions. Crash reports, process exceptions. Actually, I think I probably called it when I was reversing like collect exceptions. That's fine. I'll choose my names. Cool. So what I do in process exceptions, I loop this debug event info stuff. Okay, I probably do this a little differently from how they do, although this might just be inlined. Yeah. Okay, so for starters, this is a crash report. How many times have I reversed crash report? Not so many, actually. So I reversed it for the first time in like 2.3.0, and then I diffed it in 3.0, I diffed it in 4.0, I diffed it in 6.0, I diffed it in 8.0, and I diffed it in 9.0. And now I'm doing 9.0.1, so this is my 8th time going through the crash report system module. Which is actually not that many. Okay, yeah, so this is going to be like this debug event info stuff. This is probably svc get debug event. Yep, it totally is. What are the arguments to that? So get debug event. Yep. Edit other decompiles call. Keyword. Get debug event. Debug event info. Keyword. This is get debug event. And it's probably like svc arg64 lp1 lp. It's something like that. I forget what the actual name is. There's some LP something here that like depends on whether or not it's arg64, arg64 from 32, but that's totally fine. Also, I don't need the like fancy names. I can just do svc get debug event. I sometimes try to be really good about using ends namespacing to the best extent that I understand it, but I don't need to do that here, so that's totally fine. Yeah, so this is debug events info. This will be that, and then this is going to be this. Okay, so what does my code do? Which is probably the same thing. Oh yeah, this is the fancy switch. If v2, oh right, this should return a d word. Yeah. Hi Chris, 0x7cb. Good to see you again too, since I know you've been here, I think, in pretty much every stream that I've done. But yeah, so this does this while loop, and then they do this read from process thing, where this is crash thread, read from process. And then they do more stuff with the thread manager, but I do that later. So while the debug event has some type, and if we're here, it implies that this returns 0. Hi, the Bladeron, assuming I pronounced that right and it's the Bladeron and not the Bladderon or Bladeron or something like that. Hello. Cool. I forget which type of event is which offhand, but I know that 0 is definitely going to be attached process. So Right, so if it's 0, then this will be like handle attach process events. This is crash report, handle debug event info, attach process. And this is going to be report, handle debug event info, exception. And I don't think they have like a thread attach handler. But I wrote one. What did I do there? Oh, right. This is just because I need to keep track of the thread IDs so that I can print out where their TLS is. This is an extension for Atmosphere, and they don't do this. They don't even have the thread TLS map. Yeah, so this is an Atmosphere extension to be able to keep track of what thread has what TLS so that I can print out thread local storage for each thread in my reports. But Nintendo doesn't even save thread local storage, so they don't do this. But yeah, so attach process. Let's go to attach process. And the arguments are crash report and debug event info. So crash report this. And this is a debug event info. Okay, and this is like not selecting the right union fields. What I really want is for it to be attach process flags. Yeah, there we go. Cool. So the title ID is the process attach title ID. And is it 64-bit? Is the flags at 1? Is it an application? Is the application flag set? And this is directly the process flags that are passed by loader to the kernel. The Blade Run asks, so I know web applet changed. What else so far that you know of changed? So the web applets changed. Crash report changed, HID changed, NS changed. Let me actually just go to nin updates and see. It's not very much. This is a very minor update. Switch 9.0.1. Yeah, so it's HID, NS, crash reports, the browser, and the starter system applet. And starter is the thing that like displays the set up your Switch stuff. So this is just going to be the change that makes the Switch Lite not ask you to remove your Joy-Cons, which is super funny that happened. It is so amusing to me that people's consoles don't to remove the Joy-Cons when they can't. Yeah, browser and these 3 system modules. I am diffing crash report today, and there's only one instruction that's actually different. That says, so they changed crash report again? Lol. Yeah, they did. They changed it a bunch in 9.0 and added the screenshot stuff that I'll talk about when we get to it. But this only changed one instruction to fix a bug from their, what I assume must be refactoring. And I will explain this bug when we get to the single instruction difference. So there's not much actual diffing to do, which is why diffing is in quotes on the stream title. There's like new Joy-Con firmware or something in here, but also they added some issue where Joy-Con color not displaying attach. There's something that I saw about this where this, yeah, I don't know why I bothered. Someone linked this and reswitched. But some change that they made here is a new issue where if you like plug in a Joy-Con, a color associated with the Joy-Con doesn't show up. Masan says, for some reason I always thought it was the Nintendo logo that shows when you launch a game, and was always confused why it was a whole separate applet with special handling. Oh yeah, so the logo is just a GIF that's present in the It's a president. Ugh. Not a fan of the president. But the logo is just a GIF that shows up in process launch because it's stored in a partition in the program NCA. Starter system applet runs when a certain system save doesn't exist, and it is what handles all of the setup stuff. So yeah, this is what does all of that. Hedgeberg makes fun of me for saying a GIF, and I will point out that it is in fact a GIF. You might say GIF, or JIF, or GIF, or GIF, or JEF, or Jeff, or Jeb, depending on how much of a shitposter you are. But it's definitely GIF. Yeah, I agree, Zaki Cat. The Joy-Con color not showing up makes the system unplayable. I'm not using my Switch until it's done. I'm waiting for 9.0.2. The Switch has lost my support until they fix the Joy-Con bug. It's completely unplayable. Hedwig says it's pronounced Yif. That's true. I'm sorry. You're right. The logo is a Yif inside the program NCA's logo partition. Leaving that part. So this, getting back to actually diffing Crash Report, which is fun. Nintendo stores an address to the dying message inside like the exception context, plus a certain offset, which is 1CO. And so you can see this is basically the same. Chris 0x7TV says, will they be compatible for... am I still pretending to pronounce it Mariko, or am I allowed to say Mariko again, since I think we concluded that it's not really slang? Mariko. Will there be compatibility for Mariko consoles? So I think you are confusing, Chris. Mariko, which is the new system on a chip, which is in like the new battery consoles that come in the red box, and the Switch Lite, with the eye-patched consoles that come with 4.1.0 plus and that aren't vulnerable to Fuse. Atmosphere will have support in the future for eye-patched consoles, and in fact it already has some basic support, but not support to the level that I would like. But Mariko, man, I'm going to do my best to have support in Atmosphere's source tree for Mariko, but I also don't think that we will hack Mariko. On 8.0 and 8.0.1, we have vulnerabilities that will let us compromise the kernel, to say that explicitly. And so you'll be able to like do homebrew stuff on European Switch Lites and new battery units that come with 8.0.1. But like if your light came on 8.1.1, you're probably fucked. If your new like battery unit came on 8.1.0, you're probably fucked. We have nothing up our sleeves on 8.1.0 and higher for compromising the system, and so our support for Mariko will very much depend on whether or not we manage to compromise it. But I don't think a compromised kernel is enough to run Atmosphere. I mean, I have like this vague idea in my head to be like a huge memester and pretend that, well, the secure monitor doesn't really do anything unexpected. I have a secure monitor reimplementation, and there aren't any unique keys for Mariko, and there aren't any console-specific keys that change on a per-firmware basis that matter. You only need the per-console unique keys up until the version that's used in the factory, because all of the console unique crypto is either uses master key 0 or a device key dependent on the firmware that it was built with. And so you could theoretically like run a virtual secure monitor in EL1 that like passes through the real secure monitor if the keys are relevant, and otherwise just uses memes to derive the newer keys. And then if you have like your fake secure monitor interposition layer in EL1, you could like replace the kernel with your own thing and do a fake reboot into Atmosphere maybe, and then run Atmosphere without actually having any of Atmosphere's code in EL3. And maybe that would work, and maybe then you could run Atmosphere on Mariko units without actually compromising them. But that also sounds like a bunch of dumb bullshit, and we'll see how high effort I want to be when we actually get around to doing public kernel compromise homebrew stuff on Mariko units. Yeah, Chris, I answered this earlier, but the like eye-patched units that launched last summer, those we will support, yes. Up until like 7.x, I think. Anyway. Well, it works. The ADUB says, would that work to update to while actually staying on 8.1? Yeah, so you would like inject EMUA MMC so that you don't touch your actual system partition. And you would have your like interposition layer for the secure monitor derive the newer keys. So you actually could do the newer crypto without having a real secure monitor in EL3. And you would be able to do newer crypto because all of the secure monitor calls go through SVC call secure monitor, and so you can trap them. And so with a kernel reimplementation, it seems like doable if you are like a masochist. And you would be able to like run newer versions via that stuff. I mean, this is only possible because Mariko does not have any unique keys. It just has the normal keys. If you're thinking to yourself, that sounds like horrific, that sounds like horseshit, that sounds awful, I don't want to be responsible for that, that's also my feeling, but I might end up doing it anyway if we get to the point where you have like kernel homebrew on Mariko and no compromise. I also think it would be really funny to do, and it would be a lesson for why you should have unique keys if you're going to put the new secure monitor there. He says, can I tweet for people to come watch? Yeah, you can absolutely spread this wherever you want. I'm not going to tweet it because I have like 28,000 Twitter followers, and I like my streams to have between 20 and like 100 people. But yeah. So that's where we're at in terms of Mariko. The iPatch units will get support. Anyway, yeah, address is user context address plus TRX1CO. This is address, I think, yeah, this is just an alias for this. And it's reusing report stuff. That's super annoying. Never mind. Just ignore this bad output. Bare metal EO1 RetroArch. Oh man, that sounds terrible. So to be clear, Masan, my like vague idea for how to do atmosphere-y stuff on Mariko is to compromise the kernel, replace EL1 with Mesosphere, add an interposition layer with Exosphere running in EL1, and like have Mesosphere's call secure monitor just talk to the Exosphere shim, and then do a fake reboot into Atmosphere, since we will have like all of the kips, inject the MMMC data into the FS kip, and basically do a fake reboot into Atmosphere, into this MUMMC version of Atmosphere. And I actually think it should work in theory. It will just be a crazy amount of work to do. So we'll see. I mean, it is possible that I end up doing it when the time comes. Yeah, so this is this like query debug process memory? Probably. Man, I had SVC open, didn't I? Did I like make a new window? Yeah, I did. Okay. Zrix 69. 69. Nice. Edit other. Oh, I'm a child, by the way. I should specify. D-word SVC query debug process memory meminfo. D-word page info. D-word debug handle. Keyword address. I think that's right. Bad declaration. Is it? Did I actually call it memory info? Yeah. Okay. I actually called it memory info. That's really high effort of past me, but I sometimes do high effort things. It happens. Memory info. Query debug process memory. Let me take this because it's the same signature. Yeah, cool. So basically, this checks. Do I even do these checks? No, I don't bother because read debug process memory will fail. I originally had these checks, and then Masan told me when I was refactoring that they weren't necessary. But yeah, so it checks that the page is readable. It checks that the page. Sorry, it checks that the page is readable because it checks that the permission or with writable is read write, and then it checks that the address is bigger than the page, and it checks that the size of this memory region is inside this region. And it also checks that there's 0x10 bytes that are readable within the region. Everything you are doing can be done with JavaScripts. I'm very interested. No. The stuff that I'm doing definitely can't be done with JavaScript. You should, if you're interested in this stuff, you definitely can do it. Just practice C, practice C++, understand how C works. You don't really need C++, just C, really. And get familiar with reverse engineering and IDA. Play microcorruption, microcorruption.com. It is like the best way to learn this stuff. Larry says, do we have a WebKit for that version? I'm aware of WebKit vulnerabilities for the relevant system versions. Yeah, WebKit is not a problem. We also have NV services bugs, so that's not a problem either. Zaki says, would that super janky theoretical 8.0.1 Mariko meme also work on 7.0.1? This is the part where I tell you, I'm sorry, the 8.0.1 stuff that we have from Mariko does not work on 7.x. And so I'm not going to tell you to update your Arista non-Mariko units to 8.0 because then you'll like lose out on Deja Vu. Although it also doesn't really burn a fuse, so it doesn't really matter. But no. 7.0.1 is not vulnerable to our Mariko shenanigans that affect 8.0.1. So you need 8.0.x specifically. But there are cartridges that have 8.0.x, so it's not really an issue, I think. Yeah. And this will be a SVC read debug process memory. What is the thing for that? Buffer, debug handle, source address size. Okay. Keyword SVC read debug process memory. Maybe says I'm working on 8.1.1 switch lite with USB host. Yeah, so 8.1.1 is super fucked. I mean, the WebKit stuff that I know about affects it. Wait. Debug handle. Keyword address. Keyword size. But yeah, the 8.1.0 fixed the 8.0.x nonsense, and so I can't really say that we can compromise anything on 8.1.1. The WebKit stuff I will probably publish eventually because I would like someone who has an 8.1.1 unit to dump the system version archive so that we can put it on the wiki, and then maybe we like find something else to dump system modules. That's unlikely. I'm not optimistic, but yeah. SVC read debug process memory. Edit other decompile as call. Yeah, that's right. Oh, Fire Emblem comes with 8.0.1? Oh, excellent. That's a super easy game to get. Lots of people will have Fire Emblem. I have the collector's edition of Fire Emblem Three Houses, which is an amazing game. Buy it. It's great. But yeah, okay, so that won't be complicated. You say, I would rather not update your Mariko if possible. Well, yeah, sucks. But no, 7.0.x is not vulnerable. Sorry for your loss. Yeah, so this basically is reading in the user dying message address. It reads in a user address from this address, which is plus 0x1co, and then it adds in, then it reads a size from 1co plus 8. And then it checks if the size, it checks if the address is aligned and stuff, and then it will, if it's aligned, then it will set the user dying message to be the buffer and the size to be the size. And it caps it at 1 page. But yeah, if you have a Switch Lite or a Mariko unit that is not a Switch Lite on 7.0.x, feel free to update it to 8.0.x. 8.0.x is better for Mariko. This advice does not apply if the unit is not a Mariko unit, but if it is, update away. 8.0 is better. Yeah, so this is the same function as this. As you can see, I love being able to do this on stream because it's it is fun to show how Atmosphere mirrors Nintendo in this way. Yeah. Handle debug info exception. And this is going to be like a complicated switch, but handle debug event info exception. Yeah. Cool. So this switch, I've been informed, by the way, that I was doing custom switch statements wrong. So hopefully we do it correctly this time. Edit other specify switch idiom. So there are going to be 10 elements in this table. The table is going to be at 0x710020BD1. Size of the table element is 1 because it's a byte element. The element is shifted by 2. The element base value is 71000017E0. The input register is W8 to get the right output and not have it switch on a weird thing. And the default jump address is 71000186C. I think I did that right. Did I do that right? Yeah, I did do that right. Awesome. Yes, this will actually say that it's switching on the right thing. Before I was like saying, when I was doing this, I was saying switch input registers X10, and then it would like switch on the jump table entry in the output. This will switch on the right thing, which is nice. And this is, again, taking in a crash report this. And a debug event info. Debug event info. Yeah. And now this is, where do I do this? Select union field. Info exception type. Yeah, this is the exception type. And I think v4 is going to alias, it's not going to be assigned to later. Yeah, so I can alias that. And I also think that v5 is an alias for this that doesn't get assigned to later, so I can alias it to this. And do I have an enum here? Deep exception type, awesome. Yeah, so there's this like extra data variable, and then there's a result code. And I mean, this is the same function. If the exception type is undefined instruction, then result is the undefined instruction. I don't think that I actually bother with the extra info, but I might also access that later. I think I access that when printing because I save the whole exception info, and so I don't need to save just a part of it. Nintendo only saves part of the exception info, which means that they need to know ahead of time which bit of the data in it they will save to their report. And then if it's an instruction board, it's result instruction abort. If it's a data abort, result abort, result alignment fault. And then if it's a user break, then the result is initially user break, but then query debug process memory. This is the memory info. What is the address being done here? Yeah, so this is, it's not breakpoint really, it's user break address, yeah. This is the break address, which is associated with the service call break that was called. And it will query, and if it is writable, and it's within the memory block that this describes, and it can read 4 bytes from it. If any of these checks fail, it still uses result user break. Otherwise, it will read into the result variable the data at the break address. And I do the same thing. I read into this results, the user break address, and Masan had me get rid of the queries because they're not necessary, because read will just fail if it's not readable, and there's no actual cost to just trying to read it. I mean, I guess that this enforces that it's all within a page and that it doesn't like cross a page boundary. And so Nintendo's has a little more stringent requirements than us, but it's effectively the same thing. It would be very odd for the D word to cross page boundaries. Chris07CB says for versions 8.0.1, release speed compatible this year, better than next year. I have no idea. I do not make claims about when we're going to release anything. In the future is when it will release. I'm not able to say anything more specific than that because there's like complicated political stuff behind releases. Maybe says I think 7.1 will most exploits out by the end of this year. I doubt that. I think it will have exploits out eventually, but I doubt by the end of this year. The end of the year is in like 2 months, and I have 0 plans to release stuff within the next 2 months. Yeah, this is like specific info. Extra data. This is more extra data, and we're still in the break stuff, so this will be user break reason. Yes, this is the break reason. It'll get assigned here. And user break ends stuff early with this custom stuff. Otherwise, yeah. This is probably a compiler done thing. I don't think I do this. But yeah. Yeah, stuff will release on June 15th. What June 15th? Not sure, but it'll release on June 15th. Yeah, this is like some custom stuff for processing the crash thread info, but I do this later. Man, this is... I think this just gets the crash thread info. So this is like debug thread info, collect thread info. I think I do this later. Yeah, so I save the crash thread ID here, and then I read the crash thread from the process here. But Nintendo like embeds it or inlines it or something in this function. Yeah, I mean, there's nothing else interesting for the other cases. This is also debug exception type, and this is system memory error. Yeah, so let's dive right into collect thread info. Yeah, takes into crash. Yeah, debug thread info. A handle, a thread ID is at 64-bit. Debug thread info. This takes in. I already forgot. Debug handle. Debug handle. It takes in a thread ID. And this is a Boolean, is it 64-bit? And I don't think it returns anything, probably. Let me just check if it's using like the return information. No, it already thinks, yeah, it's not being used, so. Return result, oh, it actually does return a result. Okay, so we'll say that it returns a bool then. So, thread ID, debug handle, pointer. This is the alias for this, and this is 64-bit. Cool. So let's look at how I implemented read the thread from process. Source. This will be in threads, probably. I'm sure it's in threads. Read from process. Yeah. Set the thread ID. And then U64 blank thread state, and I call svc get debug thread param. That looks like what this is, maybe. What is this? This is probably a service call. 6D. What is the type for 6D? Yeah, it is debug thread param. Okay. Keyword svc get debug thread param. Actually, let me check. Do I have a type for debug thread param? I probably didn't bother. No, it doesn't look like I have a debug thread param type, so we'll just call it U32. Debug thread param, and then it's 64 keyword, and then it is debug handle thread ID debug thread param. Okay. Debug handle keyword thread ID keyword param. And also it returns a D word. Cover the spread type, edit other decompile with call. Cool. Yeah. So yeah, we get the debug thread param with the type of the thread state. And then this is going to be the thread state. And first this has to succeed, or we return false. This has to succeed, or this returns false. And then we check that the thread state is not waiting and it's not running. And I think these are states 0 or 1, and so this compiles into greater than 1, return false. And then this is get debug thread context. So get debug thread context is 67, so that's what we're expecting. And this is going to be keyword svc get debug thread context. Debug thread context. Context keyword debug handle keyword thread ID keyword flags. I might have called it, yeah, I probably just called it thread context and not debug thread context. Yeah, there we go. Cool. And this is like an OR of all the flags, which we'll see in the atmosphere source. Edit other decompile as call. Yep. get debug context. This is context, debug handle, thread ID, and thread context all, which is all of the flags. And then I try to support ARC32 mode, but Nintendo doesn't actually bother. But then I think Thog and Masan told me that not supporting 32-bit was bad, so I tried to support 32-bit. But yeah, if this fails or it's not 64-bit, Nintendo returns false. We set the params and try to do 32-bit stuff. But yeah, then this queries the thread stack pointer. This is where Nintendo does stuff. This is our extension, where I try to find what thread this is, because I got the TLS address from an earlier attached thread event. And then I try to read in the thread TLS, and then I check whether or not it's a libnx thread. And then if it's not a libnx thread, I read in the thread name, and we're all good. This is fun stuff for dumping thread names and dumping thread TLS. Nintendo does not do this. But yeah, so we have get stack info. And this will query the stack pointer, which is what Nintendo does. Then it'll check that the stack pointer's memory type is the right type. If it's not the right type, then it will say, well, maybe the stack pointer is below the stack, and it will query the page after that, which is .size plus .address, .size plus .address, and check if that is the right type. And if it's not, then it says, well, I can't really find the stack, and gives up. And then we have complicated logic for dumping 100 of stack. I don't think Nintendo does that either, but they do a stack trace. Yeah. We actually dump stack. Nintendo does not get a dump of raw stack. So let me go to where this stack trace code is. A read stack trace U64. We also support 32-bit. Nintendo only supports 64-bit. Yeah. So basically, this is just this logic which reads to the stack trace. It reads one stack frame at a time. A stack frame is 0x10 bytes. Do I have a stack frame object? I might, but no, I don't. But it reads a stack frame, which is a return address plus a new frame pointer. Increments the count of stack traces, writes the address there. This is misinterpreting this because this is a memory info earlier, but this is the return address, and this is the this is the frame pointer. This is the next return address. And it'll get up to 0x20 stack frames, which is the same thing that we do. Yeah. Cool, so that is up through handling debug exception events. Does anyone know how the switch light does RCM? As far as I can tell from the Mariko unit that I have, RCM is completely identical to, well, not completely identical. It's still Tegra RCM. It's the same protocol. I think it shouldn't be so different. I guess you're really asking how do you get into RCM mode, and the answer there is there's probably not a convenient way for you to put tinfoil or whatever to short the home button, but it's probably around the same place, I would expect. Man, where was I here? Process exceptions. Yeah. And this is going to be module list process, and this is going to be thread list process. What are my module manager, thread manager? Yeah, it's going to be module manager initialize. It's not really a member because the first argument isn't this. It's going to be a debug thread info crashed thread module manager. Oh, yeah. What did I do wrong? I'm sure I did something wrong. Oh, right. It's void, I think. Huh. Okay. Let's call this module manager initialize. Let's say this is, I probably needed the fast call or something stupid like that. Debug event info, debug event info, module manager. Cool. Oh, also that should be debug thread info. Yeah, and this is a thread manager. I sometimes call it context manager. I'll call it read from process here. It doesn't really matter. Manager read from process. takes in a thread manager, a debug handle, and argv64-bit. Manager, keyword, debug handle is 64-bit. Also, this does not return anything, so yeah, there we go. This always produces horrible, horrible ASM, so be prepared for that. Yeah. Also should be a debug thread info. Yeah, and then this is a module manager try add modules, which takes in a module manager and an address to guess. Keyword address. Right, this is a void. Why is this complaining about this? Well, this is doing weird things, probably because this is a CPU register or whatever. So it'll first try on the thread's process counter, and then it'll try on the thread's LR. And in 6.0.0, it started using all of the stack traces for the thread. It didn't used to do this. This was added in 5.0 or 6.0. But yeah. Try module. Yeah, I hate this. So this is like this terribly inlined bullshit for like, is there a module with the start address greater than or less than the base address? This decompiles so poorly. But this is just this loop for do we already have the module? And then I have try-find module up here, and try-find module queries our guess address and checks whether or not it is read-write. And if it's, oh no, wait, not read-write, this is read-execute. Yeah, so Nintendo does this like walking backwards thing. Where like if this fails, they will subtract 4 from the address and walk backwards. But they basically want to find a read-write permission area. I don't think they do this, but we do this to try to improve our guesses. They look for read-execute region. And then they verify that the space before it is unmapped. And a module is a read-execute region, followed by a read-only region, followed by a read-write region. And so it will just keep going backwards. It assumes once it's found a read-execute page that it's some list of modules, which should be true because Nintendo's code always does stuff this way. And then it will just go backwards until it finds an unmapped page. And once it finds an unmapped, Nintendo will only ever do things in this way so they can guarantee it, that the memory region after the unmapped region is always going to be read execute, and it will be the start of a list of modules. Oh yeah, and then they have this GNU stuff. So they find this read execute region. I guess this is like the module thing. This struct is off-put by something. It's so bad, but there's like a module name, a module ID, module start address, and module end address. That's what it's saving here. It's just terrible. This, I think, is getting the name and getting the GNU build ID. So what do we actually do? Yeah, so while the count is less than the max, we get the region extents if it's read execute. We set the start address, we set the end address, and then we do get module name and get module build ID. And because Homebrew doesn't always have a build ID, we add a fake name. But this is going to be get module name, get module build ID in some order, and get module name is just going to be like, well, that's always at a static location, so just copy in 32 bytes of name. But then they will like query for the they'll query for the start of RO data, because get module build ID is hilarious. They'll query the start of the RO data, and then they will verify that the total size is like 0x2000 or less. It will read enough data so that it can get the last 2 pages of RO data, because the GNU build hash should be somewhere in the last 2 pages of RO data. And then it just searches all of the last 2 pages of RO data until it finds, oh yeah, this is the static 0x2000 buffer, bytes s last RO data pages for build ID x2000. Yeah. Last RO data pages. It will read in these like 2000 bytes in here, the last 2 pages, until it finds the build ID, and then it'll copy the build ID over. And it knows that the build ID is GNU plus the build ID. GNU 000. But yeah, this is super inlined and optimized, so it's horrible to read because it's partially unrolled, but that's what that does. And it will add all of the modules they can find, because this might be pointing into a module, the link register might be pointing into a module, and the stack trace might be pointing into modules that we might not know about otherwise. So yeah. And thread manager read from process is similarly simple, as I recall. Samantha said a while ago that ultra wide would be good for me. I agree. I have 2 monitors. They're both 1080p. And on the left monitor, I have this VM screen that I'm doing streaming stuff in. And on the right, I have the Twitch chat for myself and OBS. And that's good enough for this, but I agree. It would be nicer if I had wider monitors. Where is thread manager? Read from process. Yeah, thread list, read from process. So this is going to be like svc get thread list. And what are the parameters of svc get thread list? Oh, and Gingir asks, hey, Sire, is find anything interesting? So I said this at the start of the stream, but there's actually only 1 byte difference, or not 1 byte, 1 instruction difference in Crash Report. And I noticed that immediately just using like a hex editor to see how much text had changed relatively. And I know where that instruction is, and I will comment on it when we get to it. But it is a very minor difference. But 9.0 added some new stuff, and I've been describing that as we go along. Okay, what are the arguments to get thread list? It's a... man, what is the first argument? What do we pass as the first argument? Add v13. Oh, it's probably a count. Yeah. D-word count. Q-word out. Titties, keyword max out, titties, keyword debug handle. Get thread list, copy the prototype over to here. Other dpiles call. Cool. Oh yeah, I'm also doing the like meme strategy of diffing against atmosphere source code instead of actually diffing against 9.0. I mean, I have a 9.0 IDA database. I just think it's way funnier to diff against atmosphere source code. Also, atmosphere source code is easier for me to understand and remember because I wrote atmosphere source code. And if get thread list fails, then set the number of threads to 0 and return immediately. Chris says, you'll be acting the scene for the next-gen consoles, PlayStation 5 or Xbox Scarlet. I don't do Sony or Microsoft consoles. I don't really care about Sony consoles or Microsoft consoles. So definitely not the PS5, definitely not the Xbox Scarlet. I don't care about either of those. So I have invested a crazy amount of effort into the Switch. I love the Switch. I'm super invested in it. Atmosphere will have my attention until the Switch's end of life. I don't think that I want to invest this level of crazy effort into the console afterwards. And I also think, looking at how secure Mariko is, like if they reuse Horizon, Horizon isn't really hackable in software at this point. And so I don't know how possible it will be to hack newer consoles. I mean, I'm sure there will always be glitching to get keys or like decapping to know how things work if you're like crazy and want to spend like tens of thousands of dollars. But I don't expect myself to spend this much effort on future consoles. I am going all in on the Switch. I'm going all in on investment to the Switch. Whatever comes next will probably be taken up by the next generation of hackers and not me. I'm sure I will poke at it idly, but it will not get this level of investment from me, and I will not write another custom firmware for it because Atmosphere. I love writing Atmosphere. It's a huge labor of love, but oh my god, I spent so much time on it, and I could not do that for another console. Keyword thread list 60 could not change. Oh, couldn't change. So I changed it. Okay, that's fine too. Number of threads. What is V7? It's probably like returning an indirect result or something in V8. That's dumb. Oh no, wait. This is literally just equaling to number of threads. Yeah, I mean, I also don't really expect whatever comes after the Switch to be hackable. So, good luck, guys. I wish you the best. Threads. Shadow Ninja says, you mentioned a while ago about going back to Atmosphere 3DS when you go to the Switch. Do you still plan to do that? So Atmosphere 3DS wasn't a custom firmware. It was just a kernel 9 reimplementation. And yes, once I am not working on Atmosphere for the Switch and I have free time and I've done everything I want to do, I want to finish my kernel 9 reimplementation for the 3DS. I think having a nice kernel 9 or even kernel 11, if we could do it, reimplementation would be awesome. Yeah, if the number of threads is less than 2x60, then number of threads is number of threads. Otherwise, it's 60. Yeah, and then it just loops all of the threads for however many there are to collect them, which is exactly what we do. For I is less than num threads, collect the info. Yep. But yeah, I am honestly not expecting whatever comes after the Switch to be meaningfully hackable, assuming they reuse Horizon, which all indications show that they are investing in Horizon as Nintendo's operating system. And so they'll probably reuse it, and it's not really hackable in software. And even Mariko, doesn't really seem to have vulnerable hardware. I mean, it has a brand new boot ROM, with fixed shit, so who knows? Read for process. Yeah, so that is all of the processing for collecting all of the information that they do. And then there's stuff for whether or not it's an application. Build report. If it's an application, it processes the dying message. Crash report. Process dying message. Yeah, so I said earlier that there was a single byte difference in C report for 9.0 versus 9.0.1. So this is that single instruction difference. Here, this compares the value against 0x1000, and here it compares the size against 8. And so they refactored C report in 9.0.0 to do the allocation stuff I mentioned earlier, where they reuse the buffer for a screenshot instead of statically allocating. And I assume that in the process, they moved dying message to be a pointer and a size, and they must have had dying message size is less than size of this dying message. Because before, this was a static 0x1000 byte buffer. And so size of this dying message would have been 0x1000. And so if they didn't change this code, which would have just been size of this dying message, how do I do that? It's probably suggestive, actually. Yeah, so if this is dying message is greater than size of this dying message, return. So this is what their code looked like before. And they changed this dying message from being a 0x1000 byte buffer to a void, to like a void star to the address of the buffer. And so size of this pointer is 8. It's not 0x1000. And so the size of changed. Yeah, the size of changed, and they forgot to update it. And so in 9.0, dying messages will not be parsed correctly. And it's because this size of, which they must have too, we are learning, changed without, actually, they didn't update the code to reflect the change type. Yeah, and so if the report is not incomplete report, basically if this debug handle is, if this is open and is complete, is the report complete, then they query and read. We just read because we don't, read will fail if it's not queryable. And so we don't really need to do the permission checks, and Masan told me to do that. But yeah, so that is that. That is the only difference between 9.0 and 9.0.1 is this size of, which they fucked up. It's a totally understandable mistake though. If you like refactor your object to not use a statically allocated buffer and you had size of that buffer and now it's a pointer, that's a super understandable mistake. I've made that kind of mistake in the past. But yeah, so that is what 9.0.1 fixed in Crash Report. Yeah. And then basically, if there are threads, then it will call this module manager initialize, which it's really module manager add thread. But I have this too: find modules from thread info, debug handle, and get thread info. Yeah. So this will, for every thread that it knows about for applications, we do this all the time, and not just for applications because there's no reason for this to be applications only. For every thread, add the program counter, add the link register, add the stack trace. And so that will find a lot more, that will find a lot more stuff. Valence says, hell yeah, cinnamon pears. So you said that earlier, and I'm assuming that the way I pronounce something is funny, but I also don't know what I'm mispronouncing, so sorry. And then Nintendo C report saves the report to ERPT here, but we will save it to SD card later. Yes, this is like crash report, save report, or generate report, or whatever you want to call it. Oh yeah, and then this will be the like on scope exit, crash report, close, which is going to be SVC close handle. Actually, this is probably just SVC close handle, but it's probably not actually a wrapper. Oh, you literally had a bowl of cinnamon pears. I see. Okay, I assumed it was something that I said, so that's pretty funny, actually. So save report. Okay, so this is still a crash report. This. And then this is a bool is detailed. And is detailed comes now from the second argument, this third argument rather, which is a 1 or 0, but I again don't bother with that in Atmosphere. And I don't really have any source code to compare to for this, but it didn't change at all from 9.0, so I'll just talk about it. So this is this weird inline thing where it gets the title ID, and then if it is library applet encounter user, then select FO, otherwise select F8. Otherwise, if the title ID is encounter Preomia, 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 then use this, otherwise it's the thing it was earlier. And then it like checks whether the offset from this static value is bigger than 1. So what this is really saying is the title ID this value or this value? And this value, let me pull up the title list. I mean, I know it's encounter and Preomia. So we have no idea what these are. really? Is it title list? Ugh, I hate MediaWiki so fucking much. Encounter. Yeah, so encounter sys is a library applet preomia sys is 101D. And encounter user is this user application title. And I think Nintendo is adding some new applets for a future system update. And they call it preomia, but it's not included in retail firmware. It's not included in development firmware. We have no idea what preomia is, except that there's an applet for interacting with it called preomia, and like Nintendo has in NS a system setting for what preomia's title ID is. It's like NS preomia title ID. We don't know what it is, but Creport says, well, oh man, what is this? This is Diffing exception type. If preomia has done a user break, bail out immediately. Don't save any reports for preomia. And I guess the logic is that they care about preomia right now and they don't want it to leak. And so preomia does not get crash reports. Unlike Nintendo, I don't care if preomia gets crash reports. Also, I don't have preomia. And so Atmosphere doesn't bother with this. And if there is no result, that is, if the result is success, and this only happens if it's a user break and the user break doesn't fill it out. Error is 2A2, which is 2162.0002, and it's like result module error. System module has aborted. This is like what the error is called if a system module aborts. Yeah, and so this is going to create an error report context. So this is like then you have the context initialize. And this will create this error report context object, which I don't really care very much about. I reversed this at one point, but I don't update it because it doesn't matter. It creates an error report context object using this 18,000 byte buffer as storage. And this is like an empty context add. And this adds to the context. This is like a field ID. Switch brew ERPT services. Yeah, these are like fields. Field 0xa is the error code. It adds this string that it printfs 040, 040, 2000 plus the module, and then the description. And then it'll printf, this is the title ID, and it's field 0x73. 0x73 is field ID program ID. Yeah. And then this adds like Boolean flags, I guess. And then t context add flag. 0x74 is abort flag. So, okay, this is an abort. Then it adds, if it's an application, it adds 0x1dd, which is application abort flag. If it's not an application, then it adds 76 and 1DC. 1DC is system abort flag, and fatal flag. So it's fatal and it's a system abort, or it's an application abort. And then, oh boy, more switch tables. I hate this. Okay, let's do the switch table thing. Let's not be bad at this. So is this like another switch table? Oh, man, I don't even know. Edit other, specify switch idiom. We'll say the jump table is at 0x. What is x8 here? Huh. Oh, I guess this won't matter. 71000 20BDB. There'll be 9 entries. Size of the table element is 1. Element shift element is 1. Or element shift is 2. Base value is 7100002548. Yeah, God, I hate switch tables. Input is x9 at the time of this. Default jump address is 7100002590. Basically switch on the title ID And these are applets. This is like web applet. This is something else. Yeah. If it's software keyboard or it's libapplet web or it's the shop applet, it goes to this label, which is basically just an exit label, I think. Yeah, so it doesn't really want to collect more information from the process if it is a web applet or a software keyboard, because these processes might contain like user passwords or something, and you don't want to take a screenshot of them, and you don't want to collect information because you don't want to accidentally upload people's passwords to yourself. And then these other applets, 9, CDC, they actually do collect stuff. And 1010 is, I think it's another web applet. Yeah, it's log and share. It also does this thing. And then there's this list of like other blacklisted titles, which I never remember. Actually, this is way more convenient. There's just a list of blacklisted titles that I could show, because it's all the same blacklist logic. It really starts here, to be honest. How many are there? Ooh, do I want to guess 6 plus like 8 or 9 plus 2? Let's call it like 15, and that's maybe wrong. Keyword blacklist titles 15. Is that wrong? Oh wait, I did that from the wrong offset. Darn, this is like a RSA keyword. Yeah, here's where I want to do this. Blacklist titles. So it's 15. Yeah, that's also not right. Man, I'm like off by 1. Yeah, this is how things go when I'm trying to guess at things. This happens a lot. Yeah, Zerix 101. Really? Am I off again? Oh, obviously. I didn't even align that. Okay, so 5th try. 5th try is the charm. 5 tries. 5 tries. Okay, looks like there are more, so let's like up that to like 20 maybe. That got some more, but it looks like there are still more of them. 25. Nope, still more of them. Looks like there's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 more of them. Yeah, let's go with 6. 6 sounds right. So that'd be 31 blacklisted titles. Yeah, so it's Preomia applets. Creport won't do itself. It won't do all these applets, and then it won't do like a bunch of first-party games. And I'm not really sure why Nintendo doesn't do stuff for first-party games, but it doesn't do stuff for first-party games. Yeah. I think this is just literally like, does it contain the title ID? Yeah, this is so dumb. Find title ID. Right, so if it's not an application and it's detailed, it goes to find this title ID. I mean, it can end up here if it's not an application or is detailed. So non-applications always get this, and applications that are detailed do this. Oh, actually, find title ID, it will always do reports for these titles. Okay, so it's not exactly a blacklist for those applications. It's a whitelist. Okay, doesn't really matter to me. I guess it's a blacklist of 8 and then a whitelist of a bunch. Do I care about that? I should nominally pretend to care about that. Blacklist titles 8. Whitelist titles. And that'll be 23, I think. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So this will add the encrypted crash report. Crash report, save encrypted port. So this is an MPT context, and this is a crash report. Yeah. Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. JavaScript and Java are really not the languages that you want to do for hacking stuff at all. They're languages with very different use cases. You would use them for different things. Now this is gonna be like crash reports, writes to crash report buffer. Yeah, C# is like Java except better. I mean, the downside, of course, is Microsoft, but it's less of a downside these days. Yes, this is like where it writes the crep magic and for, and then it like writes a bunch of fields and it like saves stuff. I don't bother doing all this because we don't do this at all. And then it generates a random key and a random IV into the AES key and the ASIV fields. And then it does crash report encrypt AES key. And this will encrypt it'll encrypt this AES key with RSA OAP using like a fixed modulus depending on whether or not it's development mode or not. And yeah, this again is not so interesting. It's just these hard-coded RSA moduli. But yes, so this will do crash report encryption. Hedgehog says I should look up Zig. Yeah, that sounds probably right. But at the same time, I love C++ and I'm a C++ stan and I don't intend to change. Yes, this is just encryption. This is like C report encrypt. It uses an encrypto AES simple code. That's just going to be crash reports encrypt data. I'll encrypt into the crash report buffer, add its current size using the key in the IV. Yeah, so it encrypts the entire buffer into itself. And then it encrypts the dying message. And then it clears the AES key and the ASIV. This is more in the context add let's just like add large field or something. It's exactly the kind of shit you use C++ for, but cleaner. I disagree. C++ is as clean as I want it to be. And I doubt that it has the level of template horseshit that C++ does. And as someone who is very invested in C++ template horseshit, you know, I'm not sure that I really want to switch. I will definitely look into it, but I don't think it's for me. I know you said it's a Rust style 2-chain and code generation compiler scripting controls. You know, I'll look into it, but I don't think I'm going to start using it or anything. Yeah, it adds, this is like field 0, field 1, field 2, field 3, depending on how big it is for the encrypted data. And then it'll add the dying field, this thing. It's dumb. Let me actually see what these names are. 0x219. Yeah, encryption exception 1, encryption exception 2, encryption exception 2, encrypted dying message is 2 and B. What is 1A9? 1A9 is a hash of the crash report. Yeah. This is a hash of the thread. And if I get my layouts, Windows, reset desktop. Yeah. Let me get back to encrypted. That's where I was. Yep. Cool. So their stuff is really straightforward. Yes, this is like LM x free and LM free to x peep, which does, yeah, LM detail free to x peep. And so this frees the stuff that they allocated way earlier, which is super cool. And then this like destructs the LM peep and then LM destroy x peep, I think. Yeah, it basically just sets it to 0. And then they like connect to capserve. So this is like an capserve initialize for screenshot. That name is totally fake. I have no idea what the function is actually called. That's probably reasonably approximate. And it will connect this music. It'll create a unit heap, which is another type of heap. It'll connect to capsc, and then it'll like clone the object and do some other stupid horseshit. This doesn't actually send any commands. It might convert it to a domain, but I don't think it does. This is just fancy logic for connecting to the capserve service. Yeah. The compiler does something really weird with the block ordering here that makes IDA choke. But just know that if initializing capserve fails, then it enters this block, and then never executes this. So this actually only executes inside a jump from this block or a jump from this block. And this is actually and then capserve generate JPEG from screenshot stream. So this is a new command added to capsec in 9.0.0. I did a bunch of reverse engineering to figure out what it did after 9.0 came out. Let me go to capserve. Actually, fuck, is capsec in display? It probably is. VI. Yeah, it's definitely in display. Fine. Direct 1D. Yeah. It's around here. Something like that. Is it 2D maybe? It's 2D, not 1D. Yeah, so this command 1204 was added in 9. It is another raw screenshot read stream command from raw screenshot stream command. Generate JPEG is a fake name. I don't know what it's actually called. But it basically just takes in the same thing that read screenshot stream does, or it takes in something that open does. The way that you normally do this, these commands are for TMA. They only work when a certain system setting is set, called settings debug is debug mode enabled. And so when settings decides that debug mode is enabled, capture enables this stuff. And this is for target manager on dev units, where it can open a certain type of display. This is like a kind of layer that it gives, and then you can read screenshots from it. And you provide a buffer and it'll read the screenshot in for you. And this is an all-in-one specifically for Creport. This is an open plus a read plus a close, which makes sense. In Target Manager, you want to have an open and then you want to keep it open to save the overhead, and you want to read stuff periodically. But this just wants to do it all in one. That's what this does. This gets a screenshot, and oh, this is actually more than just that, isn't it? This is actually like crash reports, get screenshot, and submit attachment. Because this will say to crash report I want to do this, and then oh wait, no, what am I doing? No, the previous name actually was right. This will give you an ID or whatever for whatever it is, and this just ends up being an ERPT create report with attachment. Also, I was wrong. This actually is an ERPT submit attachment, because the arguments are screenshot and then the XP storage where the screenshot lives and the ERPT context. Yeah, this is what actually captures the screenshots. This is the function that I was talking about. Yeah, that's better. Yeah, this is the one. This gets the screenshot, and then if it succeeds, it closes the capture service. This is an capture finalize for screenshot. And then assuming that succeeds, it will go here where it will submit the attachment, because error report services has in the context submit attachment and create reports with attachment in 8.0.0 plus versus just create report. And so if it, I guess there's also a context here. So it'll submit the screenshot as an attachment and then create a report with that attachment. And so then the report will have the screenshot that they just took. And the screenshot is just a JPEG. I went in Atmosphere and I set debug mode to be enabled. I actually went to patch cap server because it was easier. And this is layer ID. The maximum size is 80,000. This is layer ID application. So it'll capture the application layer. And it will wait up to, I think this is 10 seconds. It'll wait up to 10 seconds to successfully get a screenshot. But yeah, so on debug units, or dev units, I guess, it will get screenshots and attach them to crash reports. It will not do this on retail. This command will always fail with not supported or whatever on retail. Or this command will always fail. This generate JPEG from a screenshot stream. This is like for target manager stuff. And then this is just nn erpd context create report. Silly question, is this taken of the error screen? Is this taken before the error screen? This is before the error screen. This will be whatever the last frame that the application drew was. This will capture the last frame drawn by the application and not the like, oh, an error occurred screen. So this is so that devs of like third-party games who are like developing on their dev units encounter a crash in their game, they get a crash report, and Nintendo receives their crash report with the screenshot. They go, hey Nintendo, can you decrypt the crash report for us? And Nintendo goes, sure, here's your decrypted crash report, and gives them their screenshot and their stuff. Yeah, I think that's what this is for. I think that's like what that like setting in system settings is for, like, send information, error information to third-party developers is this crash report stuff. And create reports does exactly what you would expect. It just calls the like CMIF proxy function on the error report object. We should see the whitelist titles. Are there any title IDs that we don't know about? This is a big list, but could someone who is not me like take a screenshot of this and then like go do the thing? That would be great. So I have not bothered. I implemented this command in libnx, and I was like, oh yeah, I'll add it to Atmosphere, and then we'll get screenshots, and it'll be super cool. But it requires debug mode to be enabled, and debug mode like turns on a bunch of other stuff, and I would guess that debug mode will probably get your unit banned. I mean, I don't know for sure that it will, but Nintendo can definitely tell if a unit is booted into firmware debug mode. I think it's probably telemetry. And so I'm really hesitant about doing this without knowing whether or not it's really safe to be enabling debug mode, because this command will just always fail if debug mode isn't on. No, this is a different debug mode from the one in BCT-ini. This is a system setting, firmware system settings debug $ is debug mode enabled. It is a different thing. Yeah, there are like 6 different kinds of debug modes. There's like Apple debug mode. There's like settings debug mode. There's debug mode for kernel. There's debug mode for user mode. Richard says, you can do the ugly thing, binary patching to skip the check. I did do that. I implemented that patch for 9.0.0 when I was testing this command to see if it would work for libnx. And then I talked to Yellow Zate, and I was like, should I add this to libnx? And he was like, well, it requires debug modes. There isn't really much of a point. And I was like, yeah, sure. Maybe in the future I will do it, but it also doesn't work for Homebrew because Homebrew doesn't draw to the screen in the same way that official code does. And so like Homebrew won't even get a screenshot successfully here. And so there's really not very much point, since like if a user in Atmosphere gets a crash report while playing a real game, I'm not sure how useful a screenshot is to me for helping to debug the Atmosphere problem, if that makes sense. I'm thinking about it. I'm not saying no, I won't do it. It's just I'm not sure how much of a point there is. If I did it, I would have to also do the same refactor they did, where you like make it allocate stuff and free stuff from a custom heap, which is annoying itself because newlib doesn't really have very good custom heap support. Yeah. Are there other benefits to using the debug mode? Oh yeah, there's a bunch of cool stuff that it does, but I'm not sure that it's safe. It saves the report and then it closes it. And then if the report is complete, which is to say we successfully did stuff, then this will like initialize ns initialize for develop. And this will say, hey, nsdev initialize. And then this is ns terminate process. So this will close the process then. And then if it is not an application, we're actually back in land that Atmosphere implements, so let me go to my implementation. Source, it's probably in main. yeah, NSDev and its initialize. Where does it get finalized, actually? Is this like here? No. Oh, I guess they don't bother finalizing NSDev because it'll get closed when the process exits. But yeah, if it's an application, it exits successfully. And then if it's a user break, does this. This like is more. Oh yeah, this is crash report is preomia. This is a non-inlined version of the function that we saw inlined earlier. Yeah, so if it's not preomia and it's not a user break, I don't do the preomia check because the preomia check also didn't used to exist. It's new. If all of these succeeds, that is, it's not an application, and it's not a user break, and it's not preomia, then this is like an fatal throw or something dumb like that, because this contacts fatal you and calls throw fatal. Oh hey, they do have the old screenshot application stuff. That's fun. But yeah. Cool. I saw a report that Nintendo would bring another version of Switch Lite. Oh, if you're talking about the version that's like, oh, the Hack 002 thing got added. That's super fake news. Hack 002 or HDH 002 is the dev unit for Mariko. That's like the Switch Lite form factor dev unit. It's not a new form factor. It's just people seeing the FCC report and not understanding that that is for the development unit. Oh, is that a title ID that we don't know about, Valiant Stormed? Yeah, it doesn't appear on Titleist Games, I guess. Let me actually just Google that title ID you pasted. Oh, it does appear, actually. Snipper clips, cut it out together. Yeah. I mean, it's all just first party titles. But yeah, so that is all of Crash Report. That only took like 2 hours, which is surprisingly little time, but Crash Report's a small module, so it's not surprising. Also, I didn't need to look at my 9.0 IDA database at all because, well, I know Crash Report really well, and Atmosphere source code is better than looking at another IDA database. So I actually do the useful thing. Let me produce file, IDC file, dump database to IDC file, creport 901.idc. Am I still logged into Gist? I'm sure that I am not. Sign in, and then I'm gonna make my screen black and turn off my mic while I do this because people reminded me not to be an idiot last time. So let's not ruin my operational security, but yeah, let's see. Cool, we're back, and I am logged into Gist. So let's make a new Gist. Let's add this. And let's delete all that. Do this. There's probably like a Michael in here somewhere. Does not have the file path. I guess I don't really care about the file path. Yeah, okay, so we don't care about that. And then let's also add this for posterity. I think it doesn't really matter because the IDC is in, but yep. Do I need to like hit a button to add another file? Add file. Well, just ksims.py. That's because I don't think it's necessary to mute your mic. Yeah, it's probably not necessary, but at the same time, it's really funny. So, like, it is funny to pretend that someone is going to derive my password by listening to a recording of my typing. And so, you know, thanks. Crash report system module IC from 9.0.1. Make that public. Cool, it's posted in the chat. I mean, it's only been like an hour and 50 minutes. I will probably stick around for like another 20 or 25 minutes and answer your chat questions if there are any, and just chat for a bit about anything people want to know about Atmosphere or the Switch or whatever. And then I will go eat like a second dinner because I forgot to have lunch today because I'm an idiot. Laramie says, do you own a light? I am in the process of getting one imported from Europe. I'm going to be in Europe soon, and so I'm going to try to get a light then. Hedgeberg says, do the switch statement stuff I keep trying to remind you to do. So my response to Hedgeberg is, I don't want to, Dad, so I will not, Dad. Anyway, I'll be in the EU soon and trying to get a light then. I need one on 8.0.1 because 8.1.1 is completely worthless and not hackable, and I don't give a shit about it. And it seems like only like the European ones from like line XJE10 are 8.0.1. So I'll be getting a light of that thing. Any color on mine? No, because I don't care because I'm never going to play any games on it. It literally does not matter to me what color it is. The only thing that matters is that it is on firmware version 8.0.1. Chris says, do you work in Europe? No, not normally. I work where I live, which is in California. Oh, Drumo says, I forgot to drink water. That's true. I should drink water. Give me a second. I apologize again for the water drinking noises. Yes, I agree completely, Hedgeberg. But yeah, no, I mean, I hope that the Crash Report stuff was interesting. I love the Crash Report system module, and I mean, I re-implemented it, and as you can see, in terms of like what it does, my Atmosphere's implementation is very close to what Nintendo's does. And so we have all of that nice compatibility in terms of functionality. Atmosphere dumps like strictly more information, I think, except for the screenshot stuff that Nintendo added in 9.0. Waste. Yeah. Chris says, how do you consider the community of devs in Europe compared to here in the US? So in the US, I'm in the US. I think Masan is in the US. Yellow's 8 is in the US. Hedgeberg is in the US. There are lots of good people who are devs in the US. But Pluto is in Europe. Should I be like saying where people are from on stream? I'm sure it's fine. This is all like, I mean, Pluto always posted selfies of himself on Twitter, so it's, you know, he can't complain. I am aware of a bunch of devs in Europe who are all really good devs. Tux is European. Motizazer is European. Ognik used to live in Los Angeles, and that was convenient because I like Ognik, and he's a good guy. But now he lives in Australia, and I never see him anymore because I'm never going to be in Australia. So that's a shame. But I mean, there are like an even number of devs in the US versus Europe. Actually, HexKYZ, who is like the best, is in Europe, and it's actually really annoying that he's in Europe because he is only on for like 2 or 3 hours my time. He is on between 8 or 9 my time until like noon my time. And in order to interact with him, I have to synchronize my sleep schedule to make sure that I am around at that time of day, or else I will not be able to interact with HexKYZ, which is annoying as somebody who tries to work with HexKYZ a lot. And so my sleep cycle is actually shifted to make sure specifically that I can interact with HexKYZ regularly. And I will let that be my statement on how the European devs are, is that there are European devs good enough that I have intentionally altered when I sleep in order to be around when they are. Rage Quit Syntax says, what is your favorite symmetric cipher? Ooh, I love AES just because I've worked with it so much, and I have a lot of intuitions about what is and isn't possible with AES. I mean, I love AES. I think it's a great, great cipher. But it depends on the use case. I mean, for like authenticated encryption, which is symmetric, AES GCM is dog shit. It's I hate AES GCM. It's not a pretty algorithm. Like the Galois field stuff. Ugh. Poly 1305 cha-cha 20. That is the Chad algorithm for authenticated encryption. If you are like a Chad, you use Poly 1305 cha-cha 20, and if you are a virgin, you use AES GCM. Pokemon Masters uses Poly 1305 cha-cha 20, and that's all I'll really say. Well, I mean, Hedgeberg, RSA is a totally different use case. He said symmetric. I mean, if you want asymmetric, obviously you use RSA because that's asymmetric. But he said symmetric, and Poly 1305 cha-cha 20 is symmetric. Zaki Cat Game says, what is with that 2016 0928 folder? I mean, that's from like the very first stream I did. The one that I don't think ended up being recorded. No, I exported it to YouTube, I think. It was my second stream. It was recorded. And yeah, that's just the like secure monitor binary for that. I posted that. That's on my gist. I posted this IDC. The stream is on my YouTube. That's just for that. That's just the old secure monitor for that version. It's like when I did, oh, let's do a test stream where I will diff beta trust zone. That's that. Yes, Hedgeberg. Symmetry is the one where things are the same. I mean, that's a really big mood, actually. Clearly, when I say that I am a symmetrist, and I am actually a symmetrist, but when I say I'm a symmetrist, I apparently mean that I like when people are treated unequally and things are asymmetric. That's exactly what that means. Thank you, Hedgeberg. So you can tell me that Galois is pronounced Galois, and I'm aware it's French. I'm aware that it's pronounced Galois. But let me also just say it's Galois. And that means I'm going to either say Galois or Galois. Galois, actually, is even better than Galois. But I will never intentionally pronounce Galois correctly. It's way better to say Galois or Galois or Galois. Or Galuis. Yeah. I'm a big believer in mispronouncing things, if it's funnier to mispronounce them than it is to pronounce them. So, yeah. Have I ever heard a British person pronounce... no, I have not, actually. I bet it's hilarious, though. It's probably really funny. They say bois or something. That's probably pretty good. Boys City. Oh man, that in a British accent I bet is fantastic. Laramie says, what version of the new Pokemon will you pick up in November? Trick question. I am going to pre-order Pokemon Sword whenever it becomes pre-purchasable. And then I am also going to pre-order Pokemon Shield whenever it becomes pre-purchasable. And then on like release time, I will get a physical cartridge of... I haven't decided yet, probably Sword. I always end up buying like 3 copies of Pokemon games because I need them both digitally in order to do digital stuff. And then I want a cartridge so that I am not limited to one system. Like digital is more convenient for my doing like reverse engineering stuff because then I get like a ticket for the game. But physical is more convenient for the fact that I own 9 consoles. And so I just get both. Not the Switch bundle. No, I don't really believe in bundles. I don't really think bundles are a real thing. So now I'm not going to get the bundle. I mean, it's actually a big question in my mind whether or not I should buy... whether I should buy like all the games. Should I buy both of them and the physical version? I will anyway because I'm weak, but also they removed the national decks and fuck them for that and fuck everything about that. And so I don't really want to support them and I want to give them less of my money because they don't deserve my money cutting out the national decks. But I am also weak-willed and so I will buy both digital versions and the physical version because I have no morals and I do not stick to my guns. Van Storm says, I have 3 in one of the small turquoise one. Cars should be warped systems and help use it to save in the system. Saves are only per system if you are... Yeah, if you're a coward. Exactly. I don't have systems that I don't run Atmosphere on, and so I can just import and export saves willy-nilly, and so it does not matter that the saves are limited. Hedgebrick says, I wish instead of adding 100 mods each game, they added like 10 to 15. Nah. So in my ideal world, there are like about 75 new Pokemon, and that's it. 10 to 15 is way too few. I want the lowest number, or I want the highest number where it is still feasible for them to keep all the old ones. Larry says, why did they switch from saving it to the carts? It was also not really on the carts previously. I mean, on the 3DS, most games saved to the console's memory and not to the carts, but they had a special cartridge version called Cart 2 for the 3DS, which was like more tamper-resistant because the Cart 1 had like a bug in the ASCTR where you could use known plain text to edit saves. They actually did save to cart for Cart 2 on the 3DS. The carts had a rewritable flash region that was about a megabyte, or 2 megabytes or whatever, and it wrote the save to that for the 3DS. But normal 3DS games saved to the console, and they're not doing Cart 2 for the Switch. So, yeah, stuff is saved to system memory. An article came out in the last 2 days where Masu said they actually have had to cut features before in order to keep all the Pokemon in the game. Yeah, they should do that. They should cut features so that they have all the Pokemon in the game, because having all the Pokemon in the game is the most important feature. as they chose. Given that I'm split on your opinion, well, if your opinion is that they made the right choice, you're wrong and you're an asshole, and get out of my stream. But I also respect you and you're entitled to your opinion. I don't know. I'm still, like, months later, I use the word tilted in tweets, like, half a dozen times, talking about the Dex stuff. I am still super tilted about this. I am still super mad about it. It's just, I have too many things to do to be, like, spamming their Twitter. And I have too many things to do to be wasting so much energy on it. And I am going to be data mining the games and, like, helping with PK Hex regardless. And so, you know. Also, no, X and Y had all the Pokemon. X and Y had all the Pokemon. Sun and Moon had all the Pokemon. They've done this, like, marketing thing in the last 2 generations where you can't catch all of them in the first game. X and Y didn't have them all. But then between X, Y, and ORAS, you could get everything. And Sun and Moon, you could import from XY, but you couldn't catch them all. But then between Sun and Moon and Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, you could catch everything, and all 700, or fuck, it's 809 Pokemon now, maybe, were catchable. And so my assumption is that, oh yeah, they're doing Sword and Shield, and they won't have the Pokemon, they won't have all of them, but then Pokemon Ultra Sword and Ultra Shield, or whatever Uwu Swish they call it, will have the rest of them. Like, they have gotten so much shit for this that I'm sure they'll get this back. To be clear, I don't care about the actual presence of the national decks. I am fine with them only having a regional Pokedex. I just care about them having the ability to import the Pokemon so that you can use them competitively and in online. And so that you can migrate your Pokemon from older versions to newer versions. Like, they don't have to have a dex for them. They just need to have them available. Also, yeah, they have said that they, like, changed the models up between X and Y and Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. And factually, they did not do that. The models are polygon for polygon identical. So they're lying about that, at least. And my assumption is that they're just lying about the whole thing because they want PR, and people have been harassing them for, like, months about it, and they want people to stop harassing them. I just assume they're super lying, and they just didn't want to port stuff, and fuck them. But, you know, I will buy their products regardless because I'm weak-willed, so I guess it doesn't really matter. But also, to be clear, they're wrong, fuck them. I have been looking at, like, getting the new Pokemon in ourselves. Pokemon models are stored via this file, GFB PM Catalog, Game Freak Binary Pokemon Catalog. And it's not, like, a super complicated format. The real problem is converting the 3DS models from, like, BCH to this, like, new GFB model format. But it's, like, definitely theoretically possible to add models to Let's Go, and assuming Swish do the same thing, you can theoretically add models. So, time permitting, because I'll be working on Mesosphere around then probably, time permitting, I will want to try to add the new models to Swish, because it should be possible. Yeah. Laramie says, if we checked your Pokemon EV to see if the models are different, they are still polygon for polygon identical. Still completely identical. Still haven't changed them. Also, are you aiming for DMNT before Swish? There's no way that's happening. Swish is in a month. The odds of my completing Target Manager before Swish are 0 because I don't understand USB. And the Lib Stratosphere road is going to take me like another week or 2. Yeah, you say it like sushi, you're wrong, it's Swish. Yeah, the other thing that really bothers me about Let's Go is they have, like, this new bigger icon format. It's like 40 pixels instead of 32 pixels, and the art for the Pokemon that have new icons is awesome. I love it. But they only did new icons for some of the Pokemon, and so, like, some of the Gen 1 Pokemon have these cool new big icons that are higher detail, and, like, Ninetales is an example of one that just has the old icon, and it seems super half-assed. Like, why, if you're going to add newer, bigger icons, and you only have 150 Pokemon, do you not do it for all of them? And they're like different art styles too, because the detailed ones look very different from the non-detailed ones, and it's super jarring, and it super ruined my enjoyment of Let's Go. Yeah, no, Let's Go seems super rushed. There's no way that is not doable. Hedgehog says, do you need me to pick up USB enough to help with that? Man, if you could solve my USB problem, it would be so useful. I need like RAII style, C++ style, cross-platform USB. I need to be able to mimic Nintendo's USB API in order to do the target manager protocol, and I need to be able to do that on Windows and Linux. At a certain point, I'll just implement it on Windows to be like, hey, Linux guys, I don't use Linux. If you want it on Linux, do it yourself. But yeah, I mean, the end goal is cross-platform USB. And I can't use libUSB because libUSB does not have hot plug support on Windows, and so I can't detect newly plugged in stuff. Linux USB is so much easier. Yes, it is, but I need to do it on Windows because I'm a Windows dev, and I will not support Windows. If I'm supporting either Windows or Linux, I'm going to support Windows. Write it in Java? No, I'm not going to use Java. I want C++ object semantics, and I want to not have garbage collection, and I want to implement the target manager protocol correctly. But yeah, I mean, unless someone can help me with cross-platform USB, I will do Windows only. If you're working together on splitting that, the problem is that like you can't really split that work, right? You need like a wrapper around the USB stuff, and libUSB versus libUSBK, libUSBK does have hot plug support on Windows, have very different APIs, and I don't really know how to encapsulate the target manager protocol in the API. I'm happy to work with you on it. I just don't think the work is reasonably splittable. Yeah, so I have asked on Twitter and in like research multiple times, hey, how do you do cross-platform USB? And nobody has really offered to help, so that's where we're at. I would do it on Windows. I'm not a Windows user, but it'd be a great reference to start the platform devs. Yeah. Yeah, I'm thinking about just doing it for Windows and being like, hey guys, you like Linux? We'll do it on Linux. Figure it out. I don't care about Linux. Linux doesn't matter to me. Hedgehog says, could you use Python tooling? No. I tried to write it in Python. In fact, you can see in the current source tree a thing where I started writing it in Python. And it turns out that Python does not have good threads. And you need C++ thread semantics similar to Nintendo's in order to properly implement the target manager protocol. And so it is fundamentally unworkable in Python. You can see my attempts at doing it on Python in the thing. But, oh no, don't go, you can do it. I spent 3 weeks on this trying to do it in Python, and it runs into errors. It runs into things that you cannot solve without doing horrific things in Python. Like, I gave Python my honest best shot. I gave it 3 weeks of effort, and it's not workable, which is why we're in this state. I do know what I'm talking about in terms of PyUSB's usability here. Also, again here, when I'm thinking, I don't say anything. I don't like say filler words if I can avoid it. And so if you're hearing silence, it's probably just because I'm not saying anything. I don't feel the need to be saying something 100% of minutes. We can talk about it in DM later. It is genuinely a Python thread issue. Like, you cannot do threads in Python in a way that matches the target manager protocol, which requires really specific blocking calls in order to operate correctly. Like, the target manager protocol has really specific threading semantics And in particular, you need to like use OS waitable queue where stuff will be handled in the wrong order, and that will cause errors. And you just can't do it with Python threads. You're hellbent on using Nintendos? Yes. I refuse to not use Nintendos. I would sooner not have a target manager than not implement a correct target manager. Can that even work with hubs? I don't know. Probably not. Well, it might work, actually. I don't have a development unit, so I can't actually test. But I think the enumeration works for anything with the right VID PID. But yeah, it doesn't work with Python threads, and I refuse to not use their semantics. So yeah. Maybe I will just implement it for Windows and be like, well, fuck not Windows. Because if people really want to use it on Linux, the Linux community has people who write code and they will be willing to do the USB stuff for Linux. That's a good thing to ask someone to PR, actually. Maybe I will do that. You can only have like a target manager connected to a target manager agent one at a time. You can know that multiple devices are connected, but you cannot... You know that multiple devices are plugged in via USB, but you can only be connected to one target at a time, I think. Yeah, we can coordinate to try to figure this out later. But also, for the next week or two, I am really working on the Stratosphere IPC stuff, and I don't want to be like adding other stuff to my to-do list until it's done, because I will get distracted. I mean, right now, it is not possible to build Atmosphere with the master branch of libnx, and that's really bad. I've gotten a lot of complaints about the fact that you can't build Atmosphere at the moment. And so, until I am done with the Stratosphere IPC stuff, I really don't want to say, oh yeah, I'm going to work on this, I'm going to work on that, because I need to get that done so that Atmosphere is buildable. It's really bad that it's not currently buildable. I think I've gotten like multiple complaints about it not being buildable. It's like Miss Hana's complained, Robowa has complained, someone else complained in Reswitched earlier today because they wanted to build it for themselves. Yeah. Atmosphere Master should always be buildable with libnx Master, and it's really annoying that this extenuating set of circumstances makes it not buildable. I mean, I knew it was coming, but yeah. Sorry, so you're against adding more networking-focused features to Atmosphere, for example, Creport singing? Well, are you against adding more networking-focused features to Atmosphere? Not particularly. Creport sending ports of PC over network? Yeah, I'm not going to do that because Creport doing that would mean that Creport would need to be able to talk to network services, and network services is a thing that is liable to crash, and I don't want Creport to ever fail to save. The only real dependency that Creport has right now is the kernel, and if the kernel crashes, Creport won't trigger, and file system services, and if file system services dies, Creport can't launch. And so right now, there's nothing that Creport really depends upon where it's possible for Creport to fail. And I don't want to introduce dependencies to Creport that can make Creport fail. Also, like a user homebrew, Creport usually causes a fatal error, which means the system needs to be rebooted. And a user can just have something that like automatically syncs the Creport folder from the SD card to PC over wireless as like a homebrew. That seems reasonable. Chris comments on Gateway stealing Atmosphere's code and fucking everything up. Yeah, so this like whole debacle with Gateway stealing our code is super funny because 9.0.0 had this awesome bit where loader checks the metadata size against a maximum of 0x3 EO bytes. And my Atmosphere code, both pre and post rewrite of the loader system module, has an off by 1, where I will say metadata is invalid if it is exactly the maximum size. And the AM system module is exactly the maximum size in 9.0. And so that causes a black screen on boot because AM doesn't launch. And it took me 6 hours to track down, and I know my codebase very well. It took Gateway like 2 weeks to track down, and they basically ended up pulling in all of Atmosphere's updates in order to get it to work. They were using like pre-rewrite stuff before, and they had like FS-Midem renamed to Why So Salty, and they'd like combined the PM and the loader system modules for some reason, and now they're just literally using the Atmosphere code. They left in Atmosphere paths, which caused errors for people too. And then they have the super funny like stealth mode failure, where even when they fix most of the bugs in this 2.9.1, anyone who's using Gateway's thing will be banned because their console is transmitting shit to Nintendo, and people who are using Gateway shit are Ware's kids and misbehaving, and now all of that information will be uploaded to Nintendo. Stealth mode. The stealth mode error is super funny. Basically, when they copy-pasted new Atmosphere loader in, previously they had their like super funky DNS stuff living inside of the loader system module. And then when they copy-pasted the new Atmosphere, they moved it out into their like ROM menu, which is their Ware's homebrew manager thing, which is awful. And here's the thing: if you're going to like man in the middle and replace a service, you need to do that before handles are gotten to the service. And so moving it from loader, which runs very early, into a homebrew means that just doesn't work at all. And the stuff that sends reports gets handles to the DNS resolution before the handles are gotten before they register their DNS stuff. And so all of the telemetry stuff is just using the unmodified DNS service, and so will talk to Nintendo successfully. Yeah, they violate GPL, and they're Ware's assholes, and I really, really don't like Gateway. And I mean, they are up against a big issue where they are using entirely my code, and Atmosphere's code is really involved, and I understand all of Atmosphere's code, and like Hex KYZ understands Atmosphere's code, and so does Tux, but Gateway does not understand my code. And they can't compete against me in terms of understanding my code base. Or it's like a Blawar, who is like a Ware's dev, who's a guy, made an Atmosphere fork called Rajan X2, which just like edits like it hard codes some configurations and doesn't really do anything else. It's super dumb. He tried to make very simple modifications to the configuration logic and messed up a bunch of things and had stuff like launching in applet mode when it shouldn't be, because Atmosphere is all intertwined, and even though it's a trivial edit, he does not understand it well enough to make the changes. You know, that's the price of having Atmosphere be what it is only like 4 or 5 people can really effectively maintain it. And it's fine, because I'm not the only person who can maintain it. If I were gone, Hex KYZ could maintain it totally fine. He understands it all. And Tux could maintain it. But yeah, there aren't very many people who could maintain Atmosphere. Yes, I am probably the best at understanding the code that I have written. All right, it has been 2.5 hours and like 30 or 45 minutes of just me chatting. If there are any more last minute questions, I will answer those, and I think I'm gonna call it a night. I mean, I hope that the crash report stuff has been interesting slash fun. Yeah, good night to you too, Grimo. I mean, I'm gonna eat something and I'll be back around and reswitched and chatting and working on the Stratosphere IPC stuff. So I will be around still. Thanks for streaming more. Yeah, I mean, I enjoy streaming. It's just a question of having interesting things to stream. Because like the current atmosphere dev is just like me working on templates, and I don't think that me doing template metaprogramming is especially engaging. But yeah, cool. I hope everyone has enjoyed. I will hopefully stream again soon when I have something fun to stream. Okay. Good night.